name is Hoitingh. I'm a solution architect for Office 365 here in the Netherlands. To be more precise, I'm from The Hague. That's where this session right now is being recorded. The Hague is a relatively small town at the coastal area of the Netherlands. It's close to Rotterdam and Amsterdam. And I live there with my wife and 2 boys. I'm a solution architect for Office 365, meaning that I work with that technology for at least over 10-15 years now, or collaborative technology to be more exact. And I'm also a Microsoft MVP. I'm an MVP on enterprise mobility, which means I like to talk about information protection, information governance, or cybersecurity in a more general terms. And I'm also interested in any other technology, for example, Amazon Web Services, as related to cybersecurity, for example. I hope you're going to enjoy this session. And well, let's get started, shall we? Okay, today's session, data loss prevention demystified. Why the session? Well, data loss prevention in Office 365 can be rather complex, and I decided to do a session on this just to give you an overview of all the options which are there. So let's get started. Little agenda for today. I'll talk about data loss prevention. I'll look at the policies which you can set for data loss prevention. I'll show you how you could use retention labels and data loss prevention policies. And I'll also give you a sneak peek at the new trainable classifier model which Microsoft has announced during Ignite last year. First of all, why do we need to look at data loss prevention? Well, the reason might be very simple. Data is exploding. We can create it, we can store it, we can share it from any platform we like right now. It's very easy to, well, either intentionally or not, share a very sensitive document with someone. Just put it in an email or set the contents in an email, send it away, and you might have a data breach. Data breaches might constitute a problem because there's laws and regulations on that. Here in Europe we have the GDPR, which states that any data loss has to be reported within a very strict time frame. So you have to be careful for that. There's other issues with losing privacy sensitive or other sensitive material. For example, you might lose your intellectual property, for example. So there's a lot of reasons to look at data loss prevention because, again, there's so many different options people have to really share that data. So looking at a little study that was done in 2018, the total data records lost or stolen since 2013 is a staggering nearly 10 billion. So that's 10 billion records being stolen or lost because of, well, either a breach or people being sloppy or people really having no awareness that they are working with sensitive information. So helping them by setting, for example, data loss prevention policies might be a very, very easy way to go. So let's take a look at that. Data loss within the enterprise, it can be unintentionally. If someone doesn't really know they're sharing confidential information. It might be, for example, that they're using Microsoft Teams and, well, within a conversation they loosely just share some information which, well, shouldn't have been shared with the external parties within that team, for example. It can be intentionally, of course. Intentionally, people, and that's more or less the insider risk problem we have. Sending it to an unmanaged device, or just forwarding emails to mail environments outside of your system, either intentionally or not unintentionally. So there's a lot of examples. Other examples are the sharing options within Office 365, for example. Just if that's not configured correctly, or we don't have any data loss prevention rules, it might be very easy to share something from your OneDrive. If you're not allowed to share it from your SharePoint, well, you just copy it to your OneDrive and share it from there. So there's a lot of possible scenarios where a data breach can occur. So introducing data loss prevention in Office 365. What does it provide? It protects against unwanted sharing of information. It covers a lot of platforms within Office 365. SharePoint Online, Teams, Exchange Online, OneDrive for Business. You can use templates. There's built-in templates, for example, for health information, credit card information, or privacy-related information, or, which is relatively new, technology-driven information, IP numbers, keys, secrets, you name it. You can set the policies built on those templates to block access or notify compliance officers and use login. Okay, so what's not part of the deal? This might be a bit complex, but we are talking about data loss prevention, and data loss prevention does not provide, for example, encryption. It doesn't include insider risk management options. There are different alternatives for that in Office 365. So please be aware, if we're talking data loss prevention, it does not encrypt your data. Or does it? Well, get to that later. It's not Azure Information Protection. It doesn't retain your information, so be careful with that. Okay, let's take a look, and I'll just show you how data loss prevention works in SharePoint Online and Microsoft Teams, and I'll even throw in Exchange as well. Okay, let's take a look, shall we? How does DLP, data loss protection or prevention, work from a user's perspective? I'll show you two things. First of all, a SharePoint environment. Over here we've got a document library, not too fancy. One thing you might notice is the retention labels, which I've added to this library. I also have some sensitivity labels, which are now available for use within SharePoint Online as well. And what you're seeing right here is that I've got a lot of information, a PDF over here, a document, Word document over here, which have these kind of icons next to them. And this is what a user might expect to see if a document has been shared either internally or externally, but shouldn't have been. So the data loss prevention policy has kicked in. If I just hover over the document, I also get a notice of that. Contains sensitive information, and if I want to have some more information, I can add the policy tip. Well, it's been shared, so yeah, that's what's kicked off the policy. It contains an IBAN, an international banking account number, and it also has a label. So it's been flagged by multiple issues right now. It will be blocked from sharing this document, and as you'll see, I've got a lot of those documents over here as well. Just one more example, I've got a credit card overview over here. It's a credit card in an Excel sheet. So if I go to the policy tip, it has been shared, but it hasn't been affected by the credit card sensitivity. It was already labeled by a retention label, and that takes precedence. So that's why the issue is not the credit card, but it's the retention label, which triggered off this data loss protection. Okay, so that's how it works. The only way to solve this is to really look at the content and look at your sharing options. If you shared a document internally or externally, which kicks in the data loss protection, then please unshare the document or modify the document's content. Okay, so this is from a SharePoint perspective. Just a quick look at how it works from, for example, Outlook. Over here I've got an email message. I attached the credit card information. I'm trying to mail it to my internal colleague George and an external party, well, my Gmail address basically. And as you might notice already, I've got a policy tip. Your email message conflicts with a policy, so let me learn some more, and it contains credit card information. If you don't think it's sensitive, then report it. That's one of the things you can configure within the policy. I'll just go ahead and send it anyway, and let me see what happens. So I'll just send it. Message has been blocked. One of the recipients weren't authorized. So yeah, that's correct, because I'm trying to send something outside of my organization which shouldn't go there. So let me just remove myself in this case. You already see the policy tip moving away, and I can just send it. Let me reiterate, those are policy tips which you can use. There's also a notification using email. Okay, then let's look at how this would look like from a user's point of view. I have a DLP policy set right now which looks at sharing actions and also at financial information, including credit card information. So I'm going to show you 3 scenarios in which a DLP policy like that would affect a user. For example, over here we have a Teams environment. I've got a channel which is called Omaha, and this team environment is shared with externals. I've got at least 7 guests in there already, so this is an environment where external users can, or guest users can, work together with me on a project. Now let's say I'm going to share a conversation. Hello there. Okay, well, there's no problem to do so. No nonsense, no sensitive information being shared at all. I've copy pasted, well, at least I've copied some information on credit cards. So let's see how that works. Credit card info. Right there. Can any of you look at this information and see if it's correct? And over here I've got like Visa, MasterCard, etc. So let's see what happens if I share that information. And well, nearly right away you'll see the message has been blocked. In my case I can still see it because I'm the originator of the message, so I can either edit it, or I can perhaps even delete it. The other persons on the other end of this conversation won't see the message at all. They only will see the message was blocked. And let's see if I can, well, I'll just delete the message because it hasn't been, it doesn't make sense to have it there being a DLP policy. So I've just deleted it. Okay, well, those were a couple of demos on the user-based side of data loss prevention. So you'll see you get notifications, you get visual markings presented, for example, in SharePoint Online. So that's the user bit. So let's take a look now at the settings in Office 365. Okay. There's several options you can configure. We have, first of all, the data loss prevention policies themselves. These data loss prevention policies work for different platforms. You can create different policies. The policies themselves can have multiple rules and alertings. There's a complex mix of options, and we'll go through that in a bit. There's 2 other things we need to take into account. First of all, there's the sensitive information types. These are built-in templates for sensitive information, and you can create your own as well. And these are used to detect specific sensitive information. Another way to detect that is to use retention labels. retention labels can be used in data loss prevention. So if you already have retention labels, for example, for retaining or deleting content, then you can use them as well in data loss prevention. There's no option right now to use the sensitivity labels for that, but word is that that option is coming as well. And the first or the fourth thing to take into account is that, at least for SharePoint and OneDrive, Office 365 uses the search engine indexing to classify that information. Some time ago there was a little lag in that, so if you shared a document which was part of a DLP policy but the indexing wasn't finished yet, then you could still share that. Microsoft did an enhancement on that, so any new added item cannot be shared before it is being added to the index, and then the DLP rule will kick in and will make sure that any information which was shared, it was safe to share. Okay, so these are a couple of options. So first of all, let's take a look at how a DLP will be able to detect your information. And like I said, we have multiple options for that. The first is retention labels. This isn't a session on retention labels as such. I do have another session on record management, dispose with care. I'll go into that retention label part a bit more in detail. But one of the things you need to know is that a retention label is used to tag content over a variety of platforms within Office 365 and can then be used to either search for that information and of course use retention like disposition or retaining it for a couple of years and then deleting it, but also for data loss prevention. So that's a very cool thing. You configure them on an Office 365 level, and then by using a policy, again a policy, you publish them to specific locations and then they become available within those locations. Okay, how are they used? Well, labels become available. You can use an ODO policy if you have the licenses, which means that the system uses those sensitivity types, sensitive information types already mentioned, to detect the information and apply the label for you. You can even set a default label in SharePoint document libraries. So that's those are the options you have. Please do take note that if you want to use a data loss prevention policy in Exchange or in Teams, you cannot use the retention labels, unfortunately. So the retention labels are really part of DLP rules for SharePoint and OneDrive, for example. Okay, sensitive information types. Let's take a look at those as well. These are built-in. And they mark specific types of information. You can have financial information, credit card numbers, IBAN. You can have health information, like for example a health service number, and you can have other sorts of privacy sensitive information in there. They are configured by Microsoft themselves, and really they cannot be managed in a very strong degree, but you can add your own. One of the enhancements right now is the new trainable classifiers, which really enhances this bit as well. Okay, how accurate are they? They are very accurate. My consideration is that if you want some specific accuracy, then create your own, and I'll show you how that works in a couple of minutes. Or, well, why not right away? I'll just explain how a sensitive information type works. First of all, it's relatively complex. You need to get a hang of this. How does this work? A sensitive information type has a different set of components. First of all, there's the matching element, and the matching element is the keyword which the type will use to search for, and that might be a specific keyword, it might be a regular expression or a dictionary. Either way, that is the most primary thing the type will look for. Then there's the supporting elements. So if the matching element is near in the proximity of the supporting element, then there's a more there's a greater chance that the sensitive information type will be correct. So, and in this case, you again can use regular expressions, keywords, or a keyword dictionary for your supporting elements. Now, two of the more complex bits for this are the confidence level and the character proximity. The confidence level is exactly that. Most of the time it's set to 65%, and it's that level of certainty the type will use to determine if it will flag a piece of content as really sensitive. The higher you set that level, the more likely, or the least likely the system will find that information, because it really will depend on that accuracy. Then there's the character proximity, and character proximity basically looks at the matching element and the supporting element, and sees how many characters are between. If those elements are far away, then you will not get a hit. If they are within the proximity, and the default is 300 characters, for example, then you will get a hit. And we'll look at that in a short while. I'll show you how you can create your own sensitive information types. One of the things you won't see within the UI, is a document fingerprint. It's still there. You can have Office 365 create your document fingerprint for you. Like, for example, in this case, you have a patent document. You want to create a patent template, then you can create a fingerprint, and that fingerprint will be used to match any information. You cannot find this in the UI. You need to use PowerShell for this, and only very specific file types can be used. I've included the URL if you want to look at this. It's still relevant, although perhaps you might be better off looking at the new trainable classifiers if you're interested in really creating your own sensitive information types. Okay, like I said, trainable classifiers, really new. They have been around in preview since Ignite 2019. You really will need E5 for this, the license, and you can use machine learning to detect specific content. It's basically very simple. Let's say you have a very large assignment of, for example, patent documents, and you want to create your own patent trainable classifier. The system, you apply those documents to a SharePoint library. The system will analyze these, will see the similarities between the documents, and will determine if a type is a sensitive information type for a specific accuracy. In this example, you see 99.5% certainty that this really is the trainable classifier I configured. You get from an admin perspective, the chance to really say, well, this is a positive hit and this is a not positive, a false positive hit, and that makes the learning even more reliable. The difference with a custom sensitivity type, the custom sensitivity type, or the sensitive type, is really complex to configure. It has more options. You need keywords, accuracy. You really need to figure out your type before you create it. By using the classifiers, you can, basically use your content to detect the sensitive information type, and that really is a very, very cool thing to do. Okay, so let's start let's take a look. Sensitive information types and how they work. Okay, one of the things you can use to create a DOP policy is a sensitive information type. And the sensitive information type contains the criteria for which Office 365 will use to search for and find information. Sensitive information types are used for a number of things. Sensitivity labels use them as well. DOP uses them. You can search for specific content based on a sensitivity information type, and you can even create your own sensitive information type. So let's take a look. Sensitive information types can be found in the compliance center under data classification, and we will look at the sensitive information types. I will cover the trainable classifiers as well, but for now I'll go into the sensitive information types. So let's look at them. Sensitive information types themselves will be or are managed by Microsoft. So there's a lot of sensitive information types being created and being added by Microsoft. Mostly based on regions. One of the most recent additions is a Netherlands edition. We have specific things here in the Netherlands, like social security numbers, etc. So those have been added as well. You see a lot of things which are generic as well. For example, let's go for credit card, for example, and here is the credit card number. So I'll just show you how that looks like. Those built-in credit card, for example, sensitive information types cannot be edited, but it states here, okay, we've got a description. It detects these kinds of credit cards, for example. They're not editable, but I can test it. So if let's say I have a text file which contains some information, then I can test the type just to see if it doesn't prove to be creating false positives, for example. Okay, so these aren't editable. So let's create one ourselves and see what a sensitive information type is made of. Okay, so let's create one called Omaha, used for a demo. Alright, and now we've got the requirements for matching. Right now I don't have any matching elements. The sensitive information type is built out of several elements, and there's even an element which isn't prominently available within the UI, but which is part of the sensitive information type as well. But let's go and take a look. There's at least 4 sections you see over here. We've got the matching element. This is what's going to be detected. So that can be a number or whatever. I'll just take a look in a couple of minutes. Then we've got what they call supporting elements. So if these two are combined, they will provide a better confidence level. And the confidence level is over here. So this is what the confidence the system needs to have for a hit to be generated. So 60% might be low, but it's the default. If we want to go higher than that, we might go things like 85%. As for example, the credit card number is 85%. Then we have a thing called character proximity, and I already told you that in the presentation. That's basically the area where the supporting elements and the matching elements come together. If you have, for example, a document which contains a credit card number and the supporting element, for example, other personal information is on the next page, and there's more than 300 characters between those, then this won't generate a hit. So be very, very careful with these two settings. They are very they have a very high effect. Okay, let's go back to the matching element. Well, I can use keywords, for example. I can have a regular expression added to the matching element. I can also have a list of large keywords, a dictionary. Let's say in my case I'll just go for the keywords. I can have things like Omaha and SharePoint, for example, and then the system will start looking for these words. In the supporting elements I also have regular expression, keyword, or a dictionary, so I can add things like this information, for example, and it will look at for exactly these kinds of words within, or this expression within the sensitive information type. By the way, I used a colon. It's needs to be a comma. Okay, so now I'm done with this one. I just basically say next, and I can review and finalize my information type. So if I go, and now I've got a sensitive information type which can be used in a data loss prevention policy, or to create a sensitivity label or retention label even. So now it's been successfully saved. Test it before you use. Do you want to test it? Well, I'm very confident, so I say no. Okay, just a little sidestep. Sensitivity labels or sensitive information types are basically built into the system, and you need to really have to configure them to create matches within your content. During Ignite 2019, Microsoft introduced the concept of a trainable classifier. That is a classifier which uses intelligence within the system to determine what kind of information or what kind of similarities there are within content. And if a similar type of content is added to the system, then it can really classify that. And that classification can you use again for data loss prevention, for example. These are called the trainable classifiers. Like it says over here, it's still in preview, and Microsoft offers some ready-to-use trainable classifiers for you, which you can use to train and to use within the organization. I've created one here myself, and the process for creating one is relatively easy. You have items which you can need to upload to a SharePoint document library to train the system. Then you can review the predictions the system made, and if you're done with that, with the analyzation phase, the trainable classifier is created and can be used, for example, to search for content or to use it in a DLP room. Okay, well, right now we've seen sensitive information types. We've seen it working from a user's perspective, so let's see what those policies look like. A policy, basically a data loss prevention policy, is a series of questions, and it's those questions the system will use to apply the policy or not. So what locations do we need to protect? What's considered sensitive? What actions have to be checked, etc., etc. These are basically also the settings you get when you use the template to create a data loss prevention policy. Again, you can create your own policy that's more advanced. There's more leeway to really configure a lot of settings there, or you can use the built-in templates, who, to be fair, are complex as well. DLP is very complex, so I'll show you how you can create them in a couple of seconds. Right now, actually. So let's take a look at creating a data loss protection policy. Right, let's take a look at a data loss prevention policy. How does it look like? How can we create one? You'll find the data loss prevention options here at the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center. This is the dashboard, and you'll see over here I also have things like a DLP dashboard. I'll go into that in a couple of minutes. I'll just first want to show you the DLP policies. So let's go for the data loss prevention. And over here you'll see I've got 3 or 4 policies already configured. There's one which has been disabled, which isn't active, and I'll get into the activation and the possibilities for that in a couple of seconds. I do have a UK financial data do not share externally, and that's the policy which you saw already when we were looking at Outlook and SharePoint and Teams. So I'll just create a policy just to show you how that works. So first of all, you can choose a template. If you want to, you can have a custom policy assigned, so you basically are going to work from scratch, and that's the more advanced version. for now I'll just show you the template, and after we finish that one I'll show you the one which you can use to have a custom policy. So let's say we want to check for personal health information, for example. So I'll go for medical and health. And there's a lot of health information over here as well. So let's say we go for the US health, HIPAA considerations, and it will look for PII identifiers and medical terms. So that's basically a built-in template you can use to create this policy. So let me just go ahead. The system wants a name, so I'll just say I'll just say it's going to be based on this, and it's going to be based on a template, and later in this demo I'll show you the custom one. Now it's going to ask you which locations to apply the policy. This is going to be you need to take care of this, because if you choose Exchange will not be able to use retention labels within the policy. So if you want to use Exchange as an option, you don't have that option to use the retention labels. For now I'm okay with this. I'll just use all the locations which are noted over here, and I'll just go. You might have noticed that I can choose specific sites, specific OneDrives, specific email addresses, you name it. For now I'll just go with any location. It says over here review and customize default settings from the template, and as this is the template, I'll just use this one. I'll just go into custom in a couple of minutes. So okay, well, very easy. It either contains this, a social security number, a DEA number, or international classification of diseases, sensitivity types, and detect it when it's outside of my organization or inside. This is a OR function, so you can have OR within the organization or outside of the organization. If you want to have both, you're able to, but then you have to go into the more advanced option of creating a policy. So let's go ahead. Okay, I can have several protection actions. For example, just send a policy tip, send them an email notification that that something has been blocked or was blocked. I can also send incident reports to, for example, a security officer if need be, and I'll show you that in the custom in a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes. Or I can restrict access or encrypt even the content. I'll just show you this one as well, and in the custom ones we'll go into in depth on this. One of the things you can do is if someone is sending an email with sensitive information, you can encrypt it when the DOP policy is active. So that's a very cool thing. Okay, it will ask you, okay, who do you want to restrict this access for, and I'll go into these settings in a couple of minutes. Okay, I've just finished the template bit, and one of the best practices right now for my end is test it out. It's no good for users to be confronted with false positives or any other negative kind of information, so test it out first. If you don't want to do this, you just can turn it on, and then it's going to, after, well, let's say an hour, the policy is going to be in effect. But in my case, just test it out first. Okay, and now we've got we basically got a DOP policy. I can submit it, and it's going to be active in a couple of either in a couple of minutes or a couple of hours. For Teams and Exchange, it's very quick to become active. SharePoint depends on search for the information to be indexed and for the policy to become active. So you'll probably need some more time for that one, for that environment. So now, based on a template, we've got a policy. It's in a testing mode, so it's going to show up in the dashboards, etc. Now let's take a more deep dive. So this was very basic. You can set these up very quickly. Now let's go for the custom. I've got a custom policy over here. Okay, custom policy. I'll just keep the name as that, like that, just to know the difference between the other policies. Again, I have all the locations. I'll just exclude Exchange for now, because otherwise, if I use retention labels as part of this demo, I will get an error, and I don't like errors, so I'll just skip over that. And as you see over here, I can create or customize my advanced DLP rules. And now comes the tricky bit, because now we are going to create rules ourselves. You can have multiple rules in your policy, and they will have a priority. So look at your priority when you create your rules. Rules, if the first, let's say you have 3 rules, if the first rule doesn't pick up any information, it will go to the second rule and the third rule. If you don't want to do that, you can stop the rules from running when they don't find a hit, or vice versa, when they do have a hit, then you can stop the rules from there. So let's take a look at the rules, and this might be a bit complex. First of all, any rule needs a name. So I've got a custom policy rule. Okay, now I have the conditions. What needs to be what are the conditions for this rule to become effective? So let's say I want to have a specific content being detected. Okay, content can be added by using groups. So I can have multiple detection layers, if you will, based on specific content. So I can not only have, for example, a credit card number, I can also have specific text, or I can use a document fingerprint for that. I can even use a retention label. But in my case, I just want to add specific information. So let's say I have a sensitivity type. For example, I'll just have the Azure storage key. Let's see if an IP number is there as well. Yep, IP addresses. So I'll add this one as well. So I've now added an IP address. I've also added information on an Azure storage key. And what you see over here is the accuracy. So for this rule to become effective, or to find something, it will need to have an accuracy at least of 85 to 100%. So if it's in that ballpark, it will pick out that information. Over here I've got an instance count. Right now it's at least 1 and 2 to well, infinity number of IP addresses found. Let's say I want to have different rules for different amounts of items which are found. So let's say if there's 5 IP addresses or 5 account keys, that's to be considered as light. So let's keep it like that. I can have another rule which states if there's more than 5, then there's different consequences for the user. Okay, this is one of my conditions. Content contains something. I can have another if it's, for example, shared. So let's say if an IP number is shared outside my organization. So now I have a condition. This is the information the rule will look for. And this is the action which is being performed on the content. So it's being shared outside of my organization. Here I can have, for example, several exceptions. We won't apply this rule if it matches any of these exceptions. So I'll just skip that one for now. And right now I've got an action. Okay, what kind of action needs to be imposed? Well, one of the things we're going to do is restrict or encrypt the content. And let's say I'll just choose this one. And I'll just say everyone. This goes for SharePoint, OneDrive and Teams content, basically documents. I didn't choose Exchange as a location. If I had chosen Exchange as a location, then this would also have offered me the option to basically encrypt the content when it's leaving the organization. what this does is really blocking the sharing. So I can still share the information, but when I do, I will get a notification that anyone except the content owner, the modifier, and the site admin won't be able to access the document. It basically it doesn't move the content, it applies other permissions to the content. If someone tries to open the content, he or she will get an error message. If you go to the document library, you won't see the content because you won't have any rights to do so. So that is a very, very comprehensive setting, and something you really need to explain to your users as well. Okay, there are other ways to notify your users as well. You can use notifications, like for example email notifications and policy tips. So you can turn these on, no problem. People will get a notification like you saw in Outlook. If you need to, you can even customize the email or the policy tip people are seeing. For now, I will just leave it like this. And then we get to the user override. If you want to, you can allow your users to override the policy. They will either need a business justification, or they will get the option to report it as a false positive. Either way, that will override the policy. Let's say in my case, I really don't like this, so I'll just turn it off and don't allow the user to basically override that content. I really don't like that, so let's not do that. The incident report session, that's basically how you want to be informed about a DOP violation. So you can set an alert to admins. In my case, that's my email address. I can also have some instances when something happens, and how do I need to well, basically look at that. And I've got also the option to, I'll just send emails alerts to people. If you set up these kind of incident reports, you will get alerts in your dashboard as well. You will get the notification mails will be sent, and as you see over here, you can include any level of information on the DOP. I'd recommend doing this for the really high level or high impact DOP rules, not the very basic ones. But if you want to, you can really include any information on the DOP. Okay, we've got a rule, so let's just save it, and you'll see I've got a lot of information here as well. Right now it's only one key or one rule basically, and I can add multiple rules to that policy, and like I said, any rule will be will have its specific priority within this list. So if I just go next, I'll just you'll see that I got the same screens I already had with the basic template based DOP rule, and I'll just go back to that one just for 1 second, and in just 1 second. Let's have this system create the policy for this one first. There it is. Okay, so now we've got two policies. They're both in the testing phase, one with notifications, the other without. Let's go to this one just once more. Okay, we're back at the template, the DOP rule I set up just moments ago, and when we created this template, I selected the very common DOP rules and sensitive information types to look for, which in case of this template are medical numbers and more. But what if we want to use retention labels? Retention labels, well, the name says it all, basically are used to retain content, but also to mark it, to be able to search for labels, etc. And you can use these in DLP rules. However, there's one snag. The DLP rules which use retention labels can only be used in locations which exclude Exchange or Teams. So SharePoint is fine, OneDrive is fine, Groups is fine, but Exchange or Teams is not. So I changed the locations for this template, and let's just see how easy it is to just add a retention label to a policy. Over here I've got my rule. Let's say I want to create an additional rule for this. I'll just name this retention, and for the condition I'll just let me say, well, as you can see over here, my conditions also get, well, I got more options right now because of the locations I choose. So I'll have content contains, and I'll add, and over here now I've got my retention labels. So just add that one. Here are all my retention labels. I've done a lot of demos, so let's say I'll just do this one, and now it will, I won't be going through all the settings because I already did that in a couple of minutes ago, but this is basically how you can add your sensitivity label to a DLP rule. Easy as can be. Again, if you look at the conditions, I can also have the file extension or a document property if I want to. So that's because the locations which this DLP rule will now act on the support things like document properties or any other property like that. So that's the retention label for now. Okay, well, now we've seen how that policy can be configured. One of the things you might want to look at right now is how do I monitor these things. There's alerting, there's reporting. How does that look like? Well, it's relatively simple. Any DLP rule which triggers which has been triggered also triggers an alert, and those alerts can be accessed through the portal. Data loss prevention has its own portal. It's part of the reports section of the Security Compliance Center or the Compliance Center, and that also comes with a specific dashboard, so you can see what kind of information has been logged. Please do note that there's a little time frame, and the log will be enhanced over time, so it's not very real time. The alerts are. So if you have configured alerts, either using email or whatever, they will be sent in real time. You can use them to be sent to a security officer or any other entity within your organization to let them know there's been some sort of breach. Please take note. Okay, so I'll just show those in a couple of seconds. Some enhanced options for data loss prevention are some enhanced options as well. For example, Cloud App Security. If you have Cloud App Security within your license, which is either in EMS or in the Microsoft 365 E5 license, you get Cloud App Security, and Cloud App Security also has data loss prevention options. They're very, very enhanced. They're very complex as well. I think they were even better than the basic data loss prevention rules within Office 365 themselves. There's also, if you are using Cloud App Security, things like conditional access rules you can use combined with Intune, for example, to disallow the download of specific types of documents to managed devices, for example. So Cloud App Security, if you do have the option to use it, please look at this. Again, it's called a Cloud App Security broker. which means it stands between the firewall and your well, one of the functions is to sit between the firewall and any cloud apps you have, but it also uses the combined functions from Active Directory and Intune to do, for example, session-based conditional access, data encryption, delete downloads, etc. Another thing Cloud App Security is very proficient in is getting an overview of any cloud apps which are being used within your organization and if they're sanctioned or not. So again, well, I'm not a marketing boy from Microsoft, but please do look at it. It's a very, very comprehensive platform. Okay, so let's take a look at the DOP dashboards and very short Cloud App Security. Okay, well, how can you know what kind of DOP activities have been created or rules that have been activated or anything like that? Well, there's a lot of ways for an admin or security officer to really look at that information. I'll look at two of those right now. The first one being the dashboard. I'll use the new compliance dashboard for that, and within the dashboard you have a report feature. If you go to report, you'll see a lot of status and trends, as it states here already, regarding a lot of things, labels, for example, organizational data, etc. And here we find also the DOP policy matches. The DOP policy matches will have a specific time frame, and I'll just make this a little bit more. I'll just go back at least 1 month, all the policies, and just let it run. And over here are all my DOP notifications. Some are with a low severity, others are high. Let's say I'll just go with this one, and you'll see all the information. So I've got things like a DOP hit. It's 85% confidence level. The size, the severity. This one is SharePoint Online, so this was a shared file, and a credit card file, an Excel file to be exact, which was, well, found by the DOP rule and was, well, probably closed. So this is one of the ways to really look at your DOP. If you run DOP rules in the reporting only mode, in the test mode, then you will get this overview. So this is highly recommended to look at. Another way to look at this is by the rules themselves, and the rules themselves have the option to create email notifications. So let's take a look at one. As you can remember, over here I got my Teams environment, and I had a little credit card message which was blocked nearly straight away when I tried to share that with a Teams environment with externals. That rule did have a email attached to it, and over here you see the match. So you see the match. This was the sender, or basically the person trying to share the data. This is the rule which was matched. These were the actions which were prompted by the rule, the policy name, the enforcement mode, and here is I've got a credit card, one credit card with a confidence level of 85. Hi, can you check this out? Credit card, blah 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 blah. So even though it only did have one hit, it was already detected because I have my count level at 1. So should I have set this one to 5, for example, then I had 1, 2, 3, 4, probably even more. So it would have created a hit anyway, but this was very strict. So just one number was enough to really trigger this DOP rule. So this is one of the options you have as an administrator to get an overview of your DOP rules running. Okay, let's take a look. Over here we've got Cloud App Security Dashboard. I won't go into any more of the details you're seeing right now. My option here is to create a DOP policy using using Cloud App Security. I can do so by going to policies, because those are the things which are going to inspect and act on specific information. So for this I'm going to create a file policy, for example. I can have a specific template, for example, a file containing PII detected in the cloud, publicly accessible S3 buckets. So you see there's a lot of templates I can choose from. So let's get this one. Yeah, apply the template. Let's see what it does. It says, okay, I'll go and select. I don't have any filter. I want it to act basically on all the files, and I can have the content inspection enabled right here. You see this is kind of the same within Office 365, but it's well, a bit more comprehensive. Over here I've got a lot of specific preset information expressions. This uses the basically the internal data loss prevention engine of Cloud App Security. The sensitive information types are there as well. So those are the same within Office 365 and in MCAS. So I can have the content inspection. I can create an alert. I can send an alert like you see over here. I even can send a Power text message. And if I have, for example, playbooks in Power Automate or Flow, if you rather have that term, you can even send the alert to Power Automate to be handled there. Okay, I've got some governance actions like you see over here. I don't have any restrictions on the cloud app. If I have the enhanced license, if I have the standard license which comes with Office 365 E5, then I have the Office 365 platforms here. Right now I only have SharePoint Online and OneDrive and some other things. So I'll open that up, and as you see over here, there's a lot more options than in the Office 365 environment. I can either apply a certification label, for example, let's say recipients only. I can remove the third party. I can even mark it private, like you see over here. So that's how you can create a policy within MCAS to do data loss prevention. Okay, well, basically that's it for this session. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do take note. Some final thoughts: know your data, understand where it is, who's been sharing it, what kind of sensitive information is there within your environment. You can use new functionality for that, either using DLP like I discussed today, or look at things like the Content Explorer, which is coming to Office 365, which basically gives you an overview of your sensitive data, where is it, or where is it stored, who can access it, etc. Okay, well, that's for me for today. If you want to contact me, my information is on the screen. I hope you enjoyed this session, and for now, please contact me if you have any other questions.